Why would anyone spend decades collecting Sherlock Holmes memorabilia? As Faith Salie tells us, the answer is elementary.
It wasn't easy for Glen Miranker to select what to share from his Sherlockian trove when he and his wife Kathy created the exhibit Sherlock Holmes in 221 Objects, now on display at the Grolier Club in New York City.
How many objects are in your collection?
About 8,000.
When do you stop?
My hope is I will stop the day before I die.
It's easy to deduce why the Mirankers chose 221 objects. Fictional detective Sherlock Holmes and his stalwart sidekick Dr. John Watson share a London flat at 221B Baker Street. There's no mystery why Glen Miranker is fanatical about the mercurial detective.
Kind of a magical figure. He can do things you and I can't do. And he was highly flawed, no doubt a misanthrope, probably a bit of a misogynist, yet he spent his life helping people.
A former executive at Apple, Miranker has amassed a treasure of Holmesiana, first editions, pirated copies, illustrations, and letters.
A very large part of what interests me about the items in my collection is how did this book get written? Why was it written? How much did Conan Doyle make on it? What is the backstory?
Scottish author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a doctor by trade, published his first Sherlock Holmes case in 1887. 59 stories followed. Victorian and Edwardian readers clamored to get their hands on every new installment, says Kathy Miranker.
People would buy the latest issue of the Strand magazine at the news shop, at the train stations, and they would become engrossed and they would tumble into the story like Alice falling down the rabbit hole. They would look up and they missed their stops.
The 221 objects offer a little myth-busting, too.
Interesting, though elementary, said he.
Elementary!
Yes. Now, that may not be the line you remember. You probably remember elementary, my dear Watson, which actually is not in this story. It's not in any story that Arthur Conan Doyle ever wrote.
And now that we've cleared that up, how about that iconic hat and pipe?
Neither the deerstalker hat or the meerschaum pipe appears in any of the stories.
What?
They're not there. The closest we get is this deerstalker, which appears in one of the original illustrations, but's not mentioned in the story itself.
The signature pipe was an invention of actor William Gillette, who first played the detective in 1899 and wanted to brandish a big, bold prop.
So he wrote to Conan Doyle and said, "Do you have any objections if I use such a pipe?" And Conan Doyle politely said, "You can do whatever you want, I don't care."
Perhaps Doyle's indifference to Sherlock's persona had something to do with the fact that he came to resent the popularity of his hero, so much that he ultimately threw Holmes over a cliff at the hands of his mortal enemy. And one of Miranker's most prized items is Doyle's written confession.
I had been much blamed for doing that gentleman to death, but I hold that it was not murder, but justifiable homicide in self-defense, since if I had not killed him, he would certainly have killed me.
But Doyle never truly succeeded in killing off the old chap. Just ask Glen Miranker.
You know, when you talk about Sherlock Holmes, he sounds like a real person and someone you know.
He was a real person. In fact, we're not even sure he's not with us still. Surely he would have had an obit if he died. I'm convinced at 150, give or take, he's still with us.